Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Spontaneous Conversations. My name is Bart, and this is episode 1 of my new podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to inspire you to start thinking differently, to develop a mindset of transformation. Now, we know that thoughts are things, and what we think about, we become. So it's really to empower in you that transformation and get you to start thinking differently. This podcast has no paid sponsors, so I'm relying on you to get the word out. So please click that subscribe button below and the bell next to it to receive notifications. Now, today's topic is very powerful, and I chose this specifically for episode 1. Today we're going to explore the top 5 regrets of the dying. There's an Australian nurse by the name of Bronnie Ware who worked in hospice, and she cared for patients during their last 12 weeks of their lives and listened to their stories. And she spent several years working in palliative care. And over that time, she started to record their dying epiphanies. And so she wrote a book entitled The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And it impacted me so much when I first heard about this, I wanted to have this spontaneous conversation with you. Because you see, what she discovered was phenomenal clarity of vision that people began to gain at the end of their lives. So we today can learn from their wisdom and their vision. When questioned about any regrets or anything they would do differently, there were common themes that began to surface again and again. So let's explore those. Here are the top 5 regrets of the dying, according to Miss Ware. Number 1, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. Let that sink in for a moment. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. This was the most common regret of all. When people begin to realize their life is almost over, they can begin to look clearly back on their life. And it was easy to see how many dreams that they had gone unfulfilled. Most people had not fulfilled even half of the dreams they had for themselves. Often, we must face dying in order to know it was due to choices that we made or didn't make that brought about those regrets. You see, your health brings a freedom very few people realize until you no longer have it. So number 1 regret, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. The second regret, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Now, this regret came primarily from the male patients that she nursed. And the male patients would say that they regret they missed out on their child's youth and their partner's companionship. And they deeply regretted much of their life spending it on what they called the treadmill of work. They would go to work and be on that treadmill going the same pace every day and very seldom getting anywhere different. Now, women also spoke of this regret, but you need to realize that most of the women she spoke with were from an older generation, and therefore many had not been breadwinners, but those who were had the same regret. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Many people suppress their feelings in order to keep peace with others. You see, others' happiness becomes more important. They settled for a mediocre existence, and they never became who they were truly capable of becoming. and hence many developed an illness due to the bitterness and resentment they carried that they never had the courage to express their feelings and to put their happiness first. Number 4, I wish I'd had stayed in touch with my friends. Often people do not realize the full benefits of old friends until you're facing death. It's not always possible then to track them down, even with today's social media world. And so many became so caught up in their own lives that they had let their friendships, their childhood relationships slip by. And thus many deep regrets began to emerge about not giving friendships the time and effort they deserve. People who were dying missed their friends. The 4th regret, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And number 5, we touched on this just a moment ago, and I would say of all the 5, this one surprised me the absolute most. Number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. I wish I had let myself be happier. And there was a surprising commonality in this that Miss Ware found. Many people did not realize until the end of their life that happiness is a choice. Happiness is a choice. Instead, they stayed stuck in old patterns and old habits. That's called the comfort zone. They stayed stuck in that comfort zone. And that comfort zone began to overflow into their emotions and into their physical lives. And they began to fear change. So the fear of change had them pretending to others. They pretended that they were happy and that they were content. And they pretended to themselves that they were happy and they were content. But deep within, they longed to laugh properly and have silliness in their life again. Think about that. Longed to laugh properly and have silliness in their life again. Number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. So I ask you, what is your greatest regret so far? Think about that. What is your greatest regret so far? And then let me ask you, what will you do to set out to achieve or change before you die? How are you going to become and transform into a much happier, a much more in touch, a much more expressive of feelings, a person who doesn't work quite as hard, but stayed and lived a life true to themselves? What will you set out to achieve or change before you die? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. Again, this is my first episode of Spontaneous Conversations. And again, this podcast has no paid sponsorship, so I'm relying on you. So please click that subscribe button and the bell next to it to receive notifications, because as the podcast says, what I bring to you are spontaneous conversations. Until our next conversation, start transforming your life. Remember what Dr. Seuss taught us. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Until our next spontaneous conversation. This is Bart. Thank you for joining me.